even with commercial, you will find realtors. If I'm saying I specialize in residential and you specialize in commercial, that is because Randy studies commercial at a high level. I study residential at a high level. So you want to make sure that you're dealing with somebody that has the competency, number one, to be able to protect you in the event that something goes wrong.
Right. And I think it's one of those things that people either learn through choosing wise counsel, or they learn through maybe making the mistake of not choosing wise counsel, and now you're on the other end. So another episode of This is Bet on T. Craig. We are here to continue giving information, data, and statistics so that you are able to make an informed decision when investing into real estate. And I am here with the one and only Chase Sloan.
How you doing, Randy?
I'm doing phenomenal, blessed, and highly favored.
I love that. I love that so much. Like Randy said, we are here to offer you value and information and really to bring our mission to life. Our mission is to build wealth and strong communities through strategic real estate and business ownership. It is what we believe, and it is what we encourage you to believe as well, that the pathway to wealth is through abundance and ownership. So let's get into it, Randy. What are we talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about representation and continuing to make informed decisions and choosing wise counsel. I think that choosing wise counsel, no matter what business or industry you're in, is always going to be important or always be a reoccurring topic.
It's interesting that you say representation, because sometimes I think that we are in a world where representation is assumed.
What do you mean by that? Assumed as far as what? Assumed as far as who people choose to work with?
Well, I think all of that. I think who people choose to work with, and if you're actually working with someone. I think sometimes I think we just aren't having enough conversations about specifically realtors, because that's what we do. And also, what does it mean to be represented? Because it shows up in industry, right? Where you're talking about real estate or finances, whether you're talking about investments accounts. I think that as we become more independent on technology and knowledge is out there, there's this assumption that that's enough, that tech is enough, there's enough data, there's enough AI. Like, why do I need a person? I've got all this stuff next to me, plus my cousin does it. So,
something that I talk about with a lot of, people that I'm in business with or look to associate closely with is, I say, at some point in time, what happens if you created a book through chat GPT, right? And now someone says, hey, I'd love for you to come and speak on behalf of the book that you published. And now you're not able to speak on it at a very high level because you did not write it.
I'm laughing because, so y'all know one of them episodes I told y'all I applied for some jobs. So I've never worked in corporate America, and corporate America, y'all be asking for a lot of stuff for people that know what they talking about. So they were asking for a resume, they were asking for a CV, they were asking just a bunch of stuff, right? This was like early in the pandemic, right when ChatGPT released. So I'm not gonna lie, I asked ChatGPT to make me a CV. I have never worked in corporate America. I've just always worked for myself. So I get the interview. She starts asking me questions.
It goes to show, I'm saying.
And she called me out. She was like, well, you have this on your CV. The stuff was true. I just didn't remember I didn't remember what the robot wrote because I didn't write it, right? So it was kind of one of those moments where, okay, yeah, you understand it, and yet you're using this robot or this AI to present yourself in a certain form of fashion, and then you're being called out to deliver. And there was just this gap.
And you're not able to hold your own.
Yeah, I mean, the way that they were asking questions, it's neither here nor there. The moral of the story is I used a robot to make a CV, and then I got in a job interview. I forgot what the CV said. The real truth is that I just forgot what the CV says. So she was asking me questions from something that I didn't write.
But you see, it goes back to just choosing even representation wisely. Based off of what you said, if you're saying that, hey, I used this app or this program, this software to develop this cover letter for me, it essentially represented you to some degree.
Yeah.
And so then it's like, well, this was your representation, and were you able to stand on what it wrote for you?
I think that happens a lot in real estate too, because again, you have this technology and it's presenting people as though they are authorities on a subject. And then when you start working with them and things don't go along script, then you're really hoping that that person has enough knowledge or enough information to navigate when the deal goes left. Randy, I tell you all the time, real estate is great until it ain't.
Right.
And
Right.
not every transaction is easy. I mean, I said I was going to stop promoting the idea that real estate is easy and anybody can do it. It's not. And things happen. And, you know, when we talk about representation, I think what's really important is, why is representation important anyway? I mean, Randy, what's your opinion?
I believe representation is important because if you are saying you want to operate at a very high level, or you're saying you want to put yourself in the best position to win, why not look to surround yourself with the best?
I don't think people honestly are even thinking that deeply. I don't even think people are thinking, I want to operate on a very high level. I think people are thinking like,
What's cheaper?
you can do this, so
What's
do it.
cheaper? Yeah, who could do it for me? I've been guilty of that too, though. Like, oh, I want to save. It's like you're gonna pay for it regardless, whether that's in time or whether that's in money.
Yeah.
And so I'd rather pay for it more so in money than spend the time just going in a circle and then not understanding why is this happening.
I think, you know, because, and it can be a touchy subject, right? And I think it all depends on who you're working with and really what you value. I think we are at a crossroads to where some people just don't want representation for whatever reason. But I think you need to understand what that means. So let's back it up a bit. As realtors, generally there are two different type of realtors involved in a real estate residential transaction. Okay, even in commercial, yeah, we're talking about residential right now. So there's usually going to be a listing agent or a buyer's agent, and that listing agent represents the seller, that buyer's agent represents the buyer. The benefit of having your own representation is so that that person has a fiduciary responsibility to put your needs above their own. Fiduciary responsibility, what does that mean to you?
They only owe loyalty to me.
Yeah, I mean, that in the simplest form, that's really what that means. That they are loyal, they have committed, that they have said and you guys have come to an agreement, a written agreement, that this person is going to represent your best interest. And here is why this is important. Is because, and I know that there are a million different people will probably tag us and add us and saying that that's not true and this is possible and you can do it. Here's what you need to know. And I'm going to just throw out some terms because, again, we want to grow the conversation.
Right.
Okay. In real estate, your license allows you to do real estate in whatever state that you're in. So, for example, we're in Houston. We are licensed to do all kind of real estate in Texas, right? However, there is an assumption of competency that goes with that.
Right.
Okay, so just because you can doesn't mean you should. I'll give you an example. I live in Houston, Texas. I have never been to El Paso. It wouldn't be wise for me to represent somebody that wants to buy a house in El Paso because, number one, I'm not familiar with the area. Number two, El Paso is not close to Houston. Right, so
Yeah.
let's just keep it a buck. I'm probably not going to drive back and forth, and I
To
probably
show
don't have
anything,
the
yeah.
relationships that are needed in a real estate transaction to serve you to the highest level. This is where fiduciary responsibility comes in. It's not about me and me being able to earn a check or commission. It's about, are you in the best hands? So a lot of times you'll find realtors that will refer out business. Even with commercial, you will find realtors. If I'm saying I specialize in residential and you specialize in commercial, that is because Randy studies commercial at a high level, I study residential at a high level. So you want to make sure that you're dealing with somebody that has the competency, number one, to be able to protect you in the event that something goes wrong.
Right. And I think it's one of those things that people either learn through choosing wise counsel, or they learn through maybe making the mistake of not choosing wise counsel and now you're on the other end of pain or a mistake.
Yeah, it can get expensive. I think that it's very interesting to me that most buyers in the Houston market, we talked about it. You're talking about spending $250,000, $500,000, sometimes $1,000,000, $2 million, and I just think that it's interesting that you would do that on your own because you Googled a couple of things.
And that's fine. I tell people, if that's what you want to do, go do it.
I love
If you
that.
want to go wholesale. I'm not here to stop you. I'm not here to probe you to do something you don't want to do. If this is something you say you want to get your hands into, do it. By all means.
And even that, like even getting your hands, like I guess I'm just a believer in counsel. Like I'm a believer in apprenticeship. I'm a believer in internship.
Right.
That is how you learn.
Right.
You can make some very costly mistakes, whether you're talking about buying your own personal investment, selling your own personal investment, investing like in flipping. I mean, it's a legal thing. We live in a litigious society, right? Mm-hmm. People love to sue. People love to get rich off a lick. So to me, I just feel like, why even put that in jeopardy? And then on the same breath, why risk the money that you've been working to save on someone that doesn't have a high level of competency to be able to help you navigate through through all of the facets of real estate? Because
right.
I know, I think sometimes what it is that sometimes people can make things look so easy that you don't really understand how difficult it is.
Mm-hmm.
I
think it goes back to the point of people saying, hey, you can purchase this home, no money down. It sounds good every single time. And then you get into the game, you realize, oh, I got to do an inspection. Oh, an appraisal. Oh, like none of that is free.
I think that's why we sometimes have people not choose to work with us, because we start the conversation at a very high level. I tell people my job is to get it. I'm going to negotiate to the best of my ability on
right.
your behalf, and
right.
hopefully get that number down to zero, right? Mm-hmm. That is also not normal. Something that I noticed in, especially just in my experience in real estate, is that we have these low-level conversations. You don't need money to buy a house. You don't need credit to buy a house, right? And I'll tell you, one of the things is that, and I always say we kind of speak as a part of the culture. I'm not saying that we speak for the culture. I'm just saying that we are a part of the culture, mm-hmm. right? A lot of times we talk about predatory lending. We talk about people taking advantage of our communities, and yet we look for the lowest amount of effort when it comes to do stuff.
Right.
So, for example, people will broadcast like, oh, I can get you approved with the super low credit score. Pick a number, right?
For like 500.
Low 500s.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the back end of that decision, Randy, is that your interest rate is going to be higher. You're going to pay more over the life of the loan. Mm-hmm. You're going to have to bring more cash to close. Your debt can't be as high. All of these factors play a part. And I feel like we don't talk about that enough because it's an unpopular opinion, or somebody said it doesn't take all that. And I just feel like, how can we be stewards of our community if we don't tell you the truth?
Or even also setting false expectations, because now you get so caught up in it's easy. While I get it, at times you wouldn't want that to be a limiting belief, but I think when you actually learn just how deep the game can really go, you start to realize, is this a game I want to be an expert at?
Yeah, because you have to realize that you're entering into a competition. That is real estate. Mm-hmm. I think everyone thinks like, oh, I'm the only one that's thinking about this. And you're not. There are millions and millions of people in Houston right now that are all thinking the same thing. They're thinking in spring, I'm going to buy a house. Oh, when I get my tax return, I'm going to buy a house. That is great. And you also need to know, so that means that you're not the only person. And especially if you're like limited in your search and you only want to live in a certain school district, you only want to live in a certain neighborhood, then you have to understand that other people want to live there too. Mm-hmm. And as a seller, because I represent sellers, when I have a conversation with a seller, we choose the highest and best offer.
Right.
Not the sympathetic offer. I know people will say, well, write a letter. That's great, but you're human.
And that doesn't guarantee.
You got to ask yourself, like, if I got this buyer that's offering me full price, I got this buyer that's asking for me to pay for their closing costs, as a seller, which one would you accept? Like, keep it a buck. Like, let's not even talk about, because I think a lot of times we can expect other people to do stuff that we would not do.
Mm-hmm.
You wouldn't give away $20,000 of your equity.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even want to reduce the price.
Right.
And so, and yet when it's time to buy, we have these conversations like, oh, you don't need any money to buy a house. And then you get in a multiple offer situation, and then you're upset because you've been outbid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because at some point during your real estate experience, somebody had an unrealistic expectation for you.
Right. I think it varies too based off of how the transaction is set up. If one person is maybe financing or someone's purchasing cash, it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard to say no to $250 cash, $250,000 cash.
And you do need to know that people have cash. Like, sometimes, and I don't ever, it's a challenge because, see, we have these tough conversations, and then the internet loves to get in the comments talking about, oh, you're elitist. Oh, this is, I don't know what words people use, but basically not in reality. Like, oh, it's impossible. And number one, I think that we need to believe that it is possible. Like, I don't understand how we can be magic, but then be victims. Like, we have to decide, this is what I want to do, and this is what it takes to get there. And
Right.
if we set realistic expectations, then people could plan accordingly.
Mm-hmm.
But if you set an expectation of a low bar that you only need a 500 credit score and you don't need any money to buy a house, well, then you are at the mercy of either the seller or you are at the mercy of the market. And like I said, our mission is to help build wealth through strong real estate and business ownership. It's going to require an investment. Like, I don't know when it became popular to say that it doesn't take money to buy a house. I just think that's a gimmick. I think that those people get played.
But I think it also is one of those things where if you're not then getting wise counsel, you're expected to negotiate on your behalf, and which is fine because it's something you can do. However, say you are working a full-time job, if you're working 60, 70, 80 plus hours a week, when do you then allocate the time to negotiate contracts on your behalf at a high level?
I think that comes down to, like, we all get to decide, right? So the thing is that as realtors, we're independent contractors. It's not a job. There's no check-in. There's no time clock. Nobody is standing over you to go get continuing education, to invest in your knowledge, to go to this course so you can strengthen your skill set, to study the market. Nobody's going to make you do that. Mm-hmm. And it's not easy. I mean, it's the first of the year. There's a good percentage of realtors that have gotten out of the industry just because it's expensive. It's not cheap. And I think that a lot of times we paint these false pictures that real estate is easy because you go on Instagram and everybody's standing next to a house, everybody's closing a house, and you're like, I could do that. I too like houses. And then you get in the industry and you realize, like, wow, I'm working more hours than when I had a job, mm-hmm. and probably making less money because that money is not guaranteed.
Right.
So then you have, like I said, like you said, full-time or part-time realtors. And, I mean, we all get to decide.
And then I also think that this is one of those things where, while, yes, getting your license was a piece of you showing that you have expertise in this game, mm-mm. but when we talk about that there's 50,000 plus realtors in Houston alone, know that what type of realtor do you want to be?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to, like, why are you doing it? Honestly, I don't think the commission will keep. Trust me. I'm not gonna say it's not about the money because we all have to eat. However, I think once you get into real estate, you'll realize, number one, it's not as easy as it looks, and then number two, I believe that if you don't have a true, deep embedded passion for your community or the people that you serve or whatever your personal mission is, then that's when we start getting into ethical and integral complications with people.
On top of that, just to add to that, I've also learned in the last 100 days that you need to know your numbers. Because when you don't know your numbers and you think, oh, I'm closing on this home. Nah, closing on that home, yes, great, you did it. Well, you start deducting for the things what did you spend to then get the deal? And then we talk about what you have to take out for just if it's taxes, Social Security, federal.
Yeah.
You got to know your numbers.
So I guess that brings us to what questions should a person be asking when choosing representation, whether you're looking to buy a home or sell a home. What are some questions that a person should be asking their realtor before they get into an agreement with them?
How was the onboarding process?
What do you mean?
How did they actually educate you through the process in the first 15, 30 days of you working with them? Did you actually learn more about the real estate process, buying or selling, in the first 30 days, or did you not?
Well, when you look at the National Association of Realtors, they'll do a yearly review or recap on buyers and sellers' feedback. And the number two objections as it relates to people in the real estate market is that they did not understand the process and they did not understand the numbers. And I see this, like I'll see clips like on the internet and stuff like that, like nobody told me about taxes. And they get upset. And these are disconnects, right? Like, okay, I want to buy a house that has a lot of equity. I want to have a house that is appreciating fast. I want to buy a house in a community that is appreciating fast. That does come with an increase in taxes, right? Because
Right.
your taxes are based on the value of your home. So if you buy a home, for example, and it's $300,000, and then next year the value is $350,000, and the year after that is $400,000, your taxes are going to go up every year. Now, of course, you've got an opportunity because you're building equity, but nothing is free, right? So you're paying you're paying that at one point.
And I mean, it's multifaceted too, right? Because I believe that at some point we then come to a realization, like, is this the game I want to play?
Why do you say a game?
To me, I do believe it's one big game. Like, in the sense that I personally look to gamify it because whether...
Are you saying from a realtor's perspective or a consumer's perspective?
That's true. That's true.
Because I think people play games. So you got to be careful of your language because people play games. You don't want nobody to play in your face, but then you're saying, I think it's a game. Like, I think that we have to be cautious of the words that we use. I don't think real estate is a game because you can lose a lot of money. You can buy you can buy a money pit. You can things can go really left in real estate. That's why they have real estate attorneys. So I don't think it should be looked at as a game at all.
So is that you saying that for both consumers?
I don't think anybody should treat their legacy and their wealth like a game. That's gambling. You might gamify it. Like,
no, gamify it.
Oh,
I
want to own 10 houses in 10 years. You might gamify it, but I don't think you should treat your legacy and your wealth like a game.
So then it goes back to still choosing wise counsel. Because I do think that based off of who you're choosing to then represent you, you are playing a game.
That's one hell of a gamble. I don't know. I just think, because I always say you don't know you have a weak agent until it's too late. Most people, realistically, Randy, statistically, Randy, most people only interview one agent.
And that's fine, but that's why we got to ask more questions. Because they got to ask more questions.
Who?
The consumer. The consumer has to ask. I would suggest that the consumer ask questions that will enable them to choose their realtor from an educational standpoint. That you've learned something. Did you learn something from this realtor before you signed the agreement? That's the question. Did I actually learn something valuable from this realtor before I signed for representation?
Because I think that's part of our responsibility. Our responsibility is to educate. Yet in the beginning of the conversation, I mentioned agreement, and I do believe that we have to, number one, respect what people do. And sometimes I believe that as a profession, we're not respected. And I understand that there are some bad actors in every field. And yet at the end of the day, these are people, they're stewards of the community. And they're like, when I said assumption, when I said, oh, there's this assumption, and because I'm just going off of the feedback from the internet,
Conversations, yes.
right? I'm just going off of what people say. People say, well, my realtor didn't do anything. And first thing I say, well, were you represented? Did you have an agreement? Did you sign an agreement? Did you sign an agreement? Did you sign an agreement?
I see what you're saying.
Right?
Because it's the question, did you sign an agreement? Meaning that you made a decision to work with this person.
That you guys had an actual conversation, because it's a good probability they weren't your realtor. And I'll tell people that too. Like, just because you ask somebody a question, and it's even convicting for me as a realtor. Were they your client? Did you sign an agreement? I've been burned so many times. And it's because, and I take full ownership of everything that happens in my life. So then I have to ask myself, were they a client?
That's true.
Were they disloyal? Did they sign a loyalty agreement?
Did they sign the paperwork?
They sign the paperwork. And so then you have these professionals, and then they stand on it. They stand on business. Everybody wants to say that, and yet nobody wants to compose themselves in a business way. Business consists of agreements. Real estate consists of contracts. These are real things. So when I say, like, no, this is not a game, right? Because you can go to jail. You can be sued. And this is why we say who you choose to work with matters. And you can lose money, because sometimes we'll see people will get into situations where earnest monies, deposits, investment, it's all on the line. And then you have a weak agent and they're not able to protect you.
Right.
Then you're trying to call somebody asking for their help, but they don't represent you. I think it's problematic.
So when does the truth come to light?
When does what?
When does the truth come to light?
I think in the first conversation, what I have learned is to have tough conversations early. It's to have clear conversations early, to set expectations. I think, as we become a people that stands on boundaries and enforces boundaries, understand that you can't have it one way and not another.
Right.
Right? You can't stand on your boundaries when it benefits you and then be upset at other people's boundaries. Right? So I think the first thing is, like, number one, having that conversation. Real estate shouldn't start in the driveway of a home that you're interested in. It's disrespectful, for one. Like, listen. It's disrespectful.
I think it's important to also just keep asking questions. But
questions like what? Like, we keep saying this. What kind of questions should people be asking? Because people are asking questions like, can you show me this house?
Do you already have a realtor? Then I ask you a question right back. Because then I think there's always this assumption that people are like, you are in real estate, you make so much money. It's like, you can make as much money as you desire. There is no ceiling. Now, it also goes back to knowing your numbers, but it's also like, as we're saying, because and the point that I'm striving to make is that we are going to work our absolute best to ensure that you are taken care of through the entirety of the contract, through the entirety of the deal, the transaction. But then on the back end, it's like, you expect us to work for free because you don't want to sign a loyalty agreement?
It's disrespectful.
Let's really cut to the chase for the consumer, that it's like, okay, we have a fiduciary duty. We have a code of ethics that we must follow per the license that we got fingerprinted for, studied 180 credit hours in Texas to be able to do the things, to be able to show homes. So
we're not door openers.
I've had this happen to me. I was standing at the door showing a home to another client, and the woman said, oh my gosh, that home is for sale. But she was speaking Spanish though. But she was like, oh my gosh, this home is for sale. Oh, how much is it? Or can you show it to me? I said, wait, do you have a realtor already? Because she was like, I want to purchase it cash. And I'm like, ooh, like cash. Ooh, let me help you. But I'm like, okay, do you have a realtor though? Then she says, oh, okay, my cousin is a realtor. I'm like, all right, then he can show you this home. You can purchase it cash, but he can show you this home.
And I think that goes back to, you have to, I just think that's crazy for someone to not see the disconnect and why that wouldn't be okay. Like, you would not go to work and have your boss say, well, can you just do these spreadsheets for me? I mean, I don't need you to do all of it, but can you just do this part? And then you come into the office and you do this and you dedicate hours, and then they go send the paycheck to somebody else. Like, you'd be upset, right? And so one of the things that you talked about is our code of ethics, and you talked about the amount of education that goes in, background check that goes in before we can even have the right to open a door. Something that was made aware to me in conversation is that a lot of people don't know that not all people that do real estate are realtors. Okay? So when we say, like, were you represented by a realtor? Understand, because you have investors, you have everybody on the internet telling you a million different ways that you can parlay real estate and wholesale real estate, invest in real estate,
Tax
syndicate
liens.
real estate, and none of that is representation. And this is especially important, for example, when we're talking about sellers. This is a true story. During Hurricane Harvey, about maybe a year before Hurricane Harvey happened, I met with an elderly couple to sell their to go meet with them to sell their home. And we had a conversation, went through the whole thing. I showed them what they would walk away with, a net pro sheet. So every realtor that you get ready to sell your house with should provide you with a seller's net sheet. So that way you know exactly what you're walking away with from the deal, after taxes, after fees, after broker's fees. You know exactly what's what, so it's no surprises. So we give them the information, and they made a decision that they didn't want to sell, okay? And they wanted to wait. A year later, Hurricane Harvey happened. Now, this couple was like my grandparents, okay? So I get a call from the wife, and she's like, I need your help. Now, ain't nobody going to turn down grandma, so I went out there. Her husband had passed during that year.
Wow.
And Hurricane Harvey completely destroyed the house. I walked in, they had cut the sheetrock, all of the, everything. Hurricane Harvey, y'all know what it looked like. Somebody came to her and gave her a contract and said, we'll give you this money on the house. It was probably the hardest conversation I had to tell her, because she, oh my God.
Yeah, it's
I didn't
real.
know I was going to cry about this.
It's real. It's real. That's what misrepresentation will do to you.
She owned the house outright, or they whatever. And she signed it over to the investor. And she walked away with nothing. And she was under contract, and there was nothing I could do because she was under contract with somebody. She didn't know. It was a high distress situation. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's different.
That's why I be telling y'all I'm the emotional one on this show.
It's real. It's real. It's real though. That's what misrepresentation will do. And people really act as if like this is a game. I can say gamify just because, I mean, me personally, business is business, and I choose to keep my emotions out of the transaction. But there are real people. Chase is the one who told me this. It's real people doing real deals with real contracts. And so when people are playing with us or not understanding just how serious this business is and can be, it's a problem.
And it's like, we talk about grandma's house, and we talk about, and there are consequences, right? There are consequences to the things that we promote. You have to understand, like, I've done everything in real estate. If you name it, I've done it. Can't nobody fast talk me about no real estate. Been in this game for over 10 years, 13 years, 14 years in September. So February, actually, because I got my license in February. 14 years next month. And so I have seen so much. But there is nothing like seeing somebody whose husband just passed, and when you sit down and explain the contract to them, you have to tell them, because she called me, that you can't help them, and that the money that she would have done whatever with is gone. That is the hardest conversation to have. And that is why I say, like, we have this show so that way we can talk slow and talk truth. It's not always sexy. Get it? There's
Yeah.
plenty of other fast talkers. There's
Of
plenty of other
course.
different ways. But this is why I say your personal mission becomes important, because then you have to ask yourself, but why am I doing it? And I got my real estate lessons, number one, because I didn't feel we had representation. I didn't feel as a black community, we truly had representation. I'll just keep it a buck with you guys, right? Being able to talk straight to your realtor, being able to talk straight to your lender, not feeling like I'm part of the LGBT community, not feeling like somebody's going to judge you or discriminate against you. That is why representation matters, right? Like there are a million things. I'm hard of hearing. I have systems in place because representation matters. Like everybody should feel like they have somebody working on their side.
Right.
And so a lot of times, Randy, I feel like we're passionate and our passion shows up different ways. My passion shows up in tears. Yours shows up in like just straight facts, because we know the consequences of a bad decision.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
And I think at some point, right, it'll come full circle. And as you say, the truth shall set you free.
Come on,
Right.
Jesus.
So it's one of those things that it's like, go out there and see how these realtors are moving. And then you understand that you wanted to work with a professional the whole time.
And there's an investment there
And there
too.
definitely is an investment there, because you will either pay for it in time, money, energy, resources.
You know,
You're gonna pay for it
and I
in
always
some
say,
shape
like,
or form.
if you want a strong negotiator, to me, I feel like, because a lot of people bring up like our professional fee. Oh, can you give me some money back? Can you kick me some money
I
back?
swear.
Let me tell you what logically does not make sense for me. If I'm willing to take money out of my pocket, and this money not only feeds me, it feeds my family. And I'm willing to say, my niece don't need to go to dance camp. Here you go. How much more do you think I'm going to fight for your money if I just showed you I'm going to give it away?
I'm gonna give you some of my money. That means I'm gonna give you money out of my pocket.
I'm going to give you money out of my pocket that feeds my family,
Yeah,
that
that's
pays
crazy.
my mortgage. I'm going to just hand it over because you asked me.
No.
But you expect me to go to bat with this builder or this seller. And I've already demonstrated to you my negotiation skills, because I couldn't even protect my money. So why would I be able to protect yours?
You know, I learned this years ago. If somebody asks you, especially if you're in this profession as a realtor, they say, are you willing to negotiate your commission? You know what the answer is? No. And then you look at them and you don't say nothing. You just say no. You just say no and just sit there in silence. Somebody's going to talk first.
Well, Randy, what if you lose business that way?
Lose business.
Because guess what? My
Lose
cousin got their
business.
license, and my homegirl got their license. My best friend got her license. She says she's going to give me half back.
That's fine. And watch what happens. Watch what happens when, let's say, because there's no guarantee that it won't be let's say a back and forth as far as commissions, or not commissions, as far as it could be closing costs, it could be repairs, whatever the case is that needs to be negotiated. So how does that conversation look like? I've already said I'll give you half of my commission. Now it's time for me to negotiate on your behalf. I'm like, yeah, my client will pay that. Ooh.
How invested would I be?
So yeah, so that means I lost. So exactly. So I'm not even gonna go to bat for you the way I really could, because I'm like, I'm already not making as much money as I usually would if I just got my full, commission.
But here's the gotcha to that. Because again, if we are in agreement, if we are a loyalty agreement, I have to show up regardless, because I can be reported, right? Like,
No,
here's
you're
something
right.
that you may need to know. Every licensed realtor, okay, a good question to ask is, number one, are you a licensed realtor? Not somebody that does real estate, not that somebody that's an investor. It's not saying that there aren't good people out there. It just means that if you want to be represented, a licensed realtor is ethically and professionally responsible for taking care of you. If you are in Texas, we have the Texas Real Estate Commission, and you can search that realtor's name and see if they have any filed complaints about them, right? You can see if they have any ethical complaints about them. You can see what kind of education they have taken. Like, are they investing in their knowledge, right? So there's a lot of things that you can do as a consumer to make sure that you are actually working with somebody that is just as invested in their education, because Randy, the law is that your business grows to the extent that you do.
Right.
Okay. So a lot of times people think, oh, I'm gonna have this big business, but I'm not gonna learn nothing because I got it. I got a mouthpiece.
I think that's why, we're so big on mentorship, because the thing is that when you're working with professionals, I believe they show up differently. I believe the conversation is differently. I believe their mindset is different. I believe their activity is different. I believe they hold you to a different standard. Mm-hmm. You're not about to play in a professional's face. You're not. You're not going to go to the doctor and crack a joke. You're not. To talk to some lawyers, they say it's going to be $100 just for a 15-minute conversation. I don't think people really get, like, I don't want to say that because I don't study psychology like that, so I'm not going to say people. What I will say is that as time continues forward, I feel as if that reality is going to show itself in that you chose to play in certain professionals' faces, and now how do you expect those same professionals to go to bat for you? Or every professional you played in their face, they look at you different, they treat you different, and they tax you.
And I think that is why, right, like, I can't stand on what anybody else's do. I can only be responsible myself, mm-hmm. right? I can only be responsible for the integrity that I have. We talked about it last episode. What are some things to ask a person before you get in business with them? We talked about mission, vision, values, beliefs. I think that's important, because sure. I think that when you ask a person, like, well, what are your values? What are your beliefs? No, it's not directly related to real estate, but indirectly it may give you clue, mm-hmm. And real estate's emotional, okay? Like, people, I want to buy a house, I'll know it when I feel it, right? People lead with emotion when they talk about real estate.
Definitely, some people do. Some people do, because some people are, I won't say savages, but some people are savages. Some people are, let's cut to the chase. What is it?
I think that's why, and it can be, depending on how clear you are, how serious you are, you might be rocking with your realtor for 6 months, 3 months, 9 months. It's just, like I said, not everybody in our audience has purchased multiple homes. There are a lot of first-time buyers in our mm-hmm. audience. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of people that are thinking about buying in our audience. And I think about the consultations that we have with our clients. They're very transparent. They're talking about life events. Mm-hmm. They're talking about, what do I do? Help me through this. How do I help my credit? How do I file my tax? Like, it's just not always black and white. Mm-hmm. You're hoping that this professional has enough experience to be able to say, I know exactly what you need to do here. I know exactly who you need to call here. I know exactly what the process, what the plan is. And so we should investigate that a little bit more. Like, you wouldn't just go to a doctor underneath a shade tree. Shade tree cardiologist.
I mean,
I got you. I'm gonna save you full price. But
I mean, the thing is like,
we gotta have the surgery.
The older that I've gotten, that's how you say it? The older I've gotten, the older that I've gotten. Dang.
Randy's old.
No, I feel like, that's the gray hair speaking. But I just feel as if the more that I've learned is that the deeper you go and the more information you internalize, people will then begin to understand that, oh, you're not someone I will play with.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think you grow into that too, as a professional, like as a business owner. Because look, it's conflict. I don't even know where realtors will be in 10 years.
Very true. That is very true, though.
I do know that if you don't know your history, you will repeat it. And so when I got my license, the first thing I did was Google, why do realtors exist? Many people don't know this, but we met Dr. Ben. He was the first black realtor. We didn't have our first black realtor until the late 70s. So, and he, so you got to imagine, you talk about like history, you talk about redlining, you talk about people not getting fair value for their homes. For a good portion of
History.
this
Yeah.
country's history,
Right.
not only were we not allowed to buy real estate, we weren't represented from people in our community to protect our real estate. And so, again, when you talk about personal mission, it's because I feel as a community, people have been playing in our face.
And to add to that, how many professionals have we seen that they say, yeah, we're doing $500 million in development? That's a different conversation.
Yeah.
And they look exactly like us.
But how many look like us? How many black developers do you know? We went to that $1 billion blackout. Mr. Emmerich Peace hosted it in Houston last year. We went to the $1 billion blackout, and we sat with a lot of people, and they talked about the lack of representation in our communities when it came to development, when it came to land ownership, heck, when it came to home ownership, right? And so why? Because we have money. You see statistics all the time that the black community has trillions and trillions of dollars of purchase power. So why don't we have ownership?
Ooh, I'll tell you why. If you look up statistically how long the dollar stays in our community, you will be flabbergasted. I kid you not.
Not flabbergasted.
Flabbergasted. You will be confused. Because it's actually mind-boggling how we just do not keep the money in our community
I think
for
that's
whatever it's worth.
unfortunate.
Like
And
if we just strove to keep the dollar in our community for longer than a week, statistically, it'd be life-changing what we're able to do.
you know what's so interesting is that a lot of times you'll hear arguments. They'll be like, "Yeah, we tried that, but look at Black Wall Street. Yeah,
That's
we
so
tried that, but look at Tulsa. Look at this." And it's like, okay, but now most businesses are online.
You can pick and choose.
You can pick and choose. You can
pick and choose.
So imagine if we were just recycling the dollar in our own community.
You know, certain cultures don't even believe in interest. Do we understand just how powerful that is? That some cultures don't even believe in interest. So what does that then mean? They're buying these properties outright, no interest. Who do they owe? No one.
Or they are in partnership with somebody from their community, and that person is lending to them. So it's like when the Bible says, become the lender, not the borrower.
Mm-hmm.
What would it look like for you to become a lender? Some of the people in our audience are wealthy enough to be the lender. You know what I thought has always been interesting? Why doesn't the church have a bank?
Why doesn't the church have a bank?
Why does the church not have a bank? You have a congregation of people faithfully dedicated, paying tithes, building fund. What about a community fund? What would it look like?
Wow.
If the bank, would it look like if the church become the lender, and then the interest from the loans went back into the church to help provide assistance to the community, to the people that are already sowing into the church? Maybe my logic is flawed. Pastor, tag me.
Pastor, tag me. Pastor, please.
Pastor, please tag me. I'm just having a question. You have people that have been sowing faithfully into a storehouse. What do storehouses do?
Make money? I mean, well.
No, they store food.
Well.
Why am I not eating from the storehouse?
You know what?
I'm just asking. These questions just can't. I didn't plan to talk about this, Pastor. I've just always been curious as to why why the church don't have a bank. Because if we have the community and we sow in tithes, and then if we had the bank and then the church became the lender because that's Bible, and then we charged whatever interest, because I don't think anything is free, right? We can't expect stuff from our community that we wouldn't expect from others. So you wouldn't go to Chase Bank and expect a loan without interest.
Right.
So if we had a bank in the church and everybody's paying tithes into the church, so therefore we have money, and then we have interest on the money that came from the church and the tithes, and then everybody got their home loans from the church. Maybe I'm crazy.
No,
I don't know.
I just feel like
I ain't been to church in a while. I go to bedside Baptist, so whatever.
I just feel like one day it'll click. I just feel like one day it'll really click, and we'll be like, why are we not further? Because I remember I was 20 years old and I was getting paid a salary over $60,000 at 20. And maybe
Good job.
maybe
Good
the
job. No,
maybe the blessing came too soon and
I'm sorry.
I got
At 20,
humbled.
at
But
20, I was not. At 20, I was working at Foot Locker.
But I got humbled. I think I got humbled because like a few months later, I was no longer working there. But to say this is what I'm saying, is that I remember my coworker who was not the same color as me, not the same race as me, but what he said was, he was like, well, you didn't attempt to have a victim mindset, and look how far you got. Because he was saying, like, because mind you, I was in Alabama. Like, and then right after I left Alabama, I went to Georgia. So to be honest, I think it's because for me, I was like, I'm going to continue to now bet on myself or bet on my skills or bet on my capacity to be able to perform. And the same could be said for our community. That it's like, when will it click that we need to do better as a community? Not a singular person, but I remember you and I had a conversation. You said, what would collaboration look like within our community? It's a question. And I love questions because it allows you to then think. Mm-hmm. While a statement closes the mind, a question opens the mind.
I think that's a good test of the people in your life. Like, are they telling you what to think, or are they teaching you how to think? And the only way you can teach a person how to think is ask questions.
Hey, write that down.
Write that down.
Are they telling you how to think, or are they teaching you how to think? And it goes back to outwitting the devil. It always comes full circle, because you got to be able to think for yourself.
Absolutely. So when you said, like, as a community, as a
what
collective,
would it look like?
We need to do better. I think that's honest, because I'll tell you what, it's so hard to have hard conversations in our community. Again, we're a part of the community. We're speaking as members in the community. I'm not speaking for the community. It just don't apply to you. Don't listen to it. However, maybe this is an opportunity to have a come to Jesus meeting and say, we have to remove being a victim for whatever reason. Like, the only way I believe that you can make big changes in your life is to take extreme ownership. It don't matter if it was your fault or not.
You know what? And this is why upbringing is so important. I think this is why upbringing is so important. Mind you, I'm not a scholar in philosophy. I went into college to study business. Now, what I will say is that based off of how I was raised, most of my family came from Africa. They literally came from Africa and built something in America. So there was no time to ever be like, am I a victim of my circumstances? That is not the way that I was raised. Mm-hmm. I was raised that you go put in the work, and for whatever it's worth, you then are able to create the life that you want to live.
Yeah.
That's all I knew. That's all I knew.
And I think personal experience and upbringing will show you. I think that there was a statistic, don't quote me, but they were talking about how basically most millionaires are not second generation realtors. I understand on the internet it's easy to say, I keep talking about the internet because that's who we're talking about. And I be on the internet, and so I just read comments. I just read what people say. A lot of people believe the lie that wealth is inherited. So it's easier to dismiss somebody's success because they say, well, yeah, of course, you had a silver spoon, or yeah, of course, your parents did this, or yeah, of course, you came from a lineage of people that, you know.
No, I can tell you right
everybody
now.
Has to work.
I can assure you, I do not come from money.
And my parents don't give me money.
I don't come from money, but I watch my family work hard, though. I can assure you that one. I'd say I was middle class. Is that low middle? I was low middle class for maybe half my life. And then we slowly, my mom continued to build.
I think people should, again, some things just be fascinating to me. I just be thinking to myself, like, how are we talking about generational legacy, but you get upset at anybody that has supported generation?
Yeah, I think that, and then mind you, though, it always comes back to education, because you need to then know what to do in order to then sustain whatever was built.
You ever heard about the story of King Mansa Musa? He's like the richest.
one of the richest black,
is the richest.
Yeah.
Not one of the richest. Is the richest.
Yeah.
Black men in history. Mm-hmm. One of the interesting things, however, and I don't know if it happened with his lineage, but after he died, it didn't last 4 generations. And they say most wealth will not survive 4 generations. The first generations build it. The second generations inherit it. The third generations struggle to keep it. The fourth generation loses it. And it cycles.
History repeats itself.
And I don't even know how long as a community we're keeping wealth. Because like you said, we don't keep the dollar in the community. So
I mean, look it up.
how are we building legacies and generational wealth if we're not keeping it beyond 2 generations? We don't even want to go back home to families. Family reunion. You don't go to family reunion because you don't like such and such, such and such, such and such. So
let's be honest.
What is the history? What is the subliminal message that you're sending to your children? You don't fool with your family. So are your children supposed to fool with you? I know you're breaking generational curses. You don't think this is going to apply. But how can we say that? I am not my ancestors. Why not? Why are we disrespecting our ancestors like that? But you got a whole altar to them, but then on the internet you're like, I am not my ancestors.
So
I am my ancestors. Shout out.
Oh, that's different.
I am my ancestors.
That's
Matter of fact, I am my ancestors' wildest dream.
You know, this is from a city of Detroit, generational wealth. It's like DetroitMichigan.gov 2023. May 24th, 2023. A Black Star Project study on the racial wealth gap calculates that $1 circulates 6 hours in the black community.
I just knew you were going to say something about days.
No.
I wasn't going to say years.
I was going to say hours. At first, I was going to say minutes, but I was like, stop. Let me actually look up something. So 6 hours in the black community, 6 hours in the black community, 6 hours in the black community. Let that sink in. 20 days in the Jewish community and 30 days in the Asian community. Now, this is not a matter of what I feel.
That means from the time that you went to work this morning
to the time you
clocked out.
To the time you got home, the money is gone.
It's sad.
Imagine someone coming to you and say, this dollar right here, you will never see it again.
But we got generational wealth.
That wouldn't hurt.
Legacy.
That wouldn't hurt if somebody said, this dollar, you will not see it again. It's over with. It's gone. Dismiss it. It's out of there. Imagine what that feels like. Imagine.
So how does one keep $1 in a community? Maybe it's the conversation that's missing. What does that mean to keep $1 in the community?
I would say, as you've mentioned to me before, is that you want to then understand where your money is going, but who you're investing your money with. Where you look at your bank statements. Look at your bank statements. Because who owns the gas stations? Who owns the grocery stores? Just look at where your money is going.
And are they investing it back to you?
Exactly. I remember when I was 18 years old was when I really understood the concept of you either can be a producer or you can be a consumer. And so if I was going to have an iPhone, but I have no iPhone stock, yeah, there's something wrong with that. You know what I'm saying? If I have a MacBook, but I have no Apple stock, you see what I'm saying? Like it just comes down to where are we putting our money?
Yeah. You know, I know that we started this conversation in representation. However, there's also wealth that should be considered. And so we're going to keep this conversation going. And sometimes, Randy, you say it all the time, just sit in it. And the reason I say that is because I'm telling you, I was distracted for the last 5 years. And I say this because it's painful to say out loud. It's a reminder that it's because I was distracted over the last 5 years that I did not become all that I could be. While to people that see me, they say, "Wow, Mr. Consistency." They say, "Wow, you've done so much." I'm like, so what would that then look like if I was focused? Yeah, I always say we're not here to speak from a higher level or a pedestal or anything outside of our experiences. So we do hope that you tune in to the next conversation. Randy, we always going to keep it high level, not eye level. And we appreciate having this hour of your time.
Welcome, or this was another episode of a high-level conversation with Bet Auntie Craig, and we can assure you there will be more coming soon. Thank you for your time and attention. Let's get it.
Like, subscribe, Follow. Share this with somebody you know, even somebody you don't.
Stay blessed and highly favored.
And sing.